All right, welcome back to the Detroit Lions News Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Chap. Let's talk about this offense for the Colts because when you look at it from a glance, you just look at it. Passing yards for Anthony Richardson, 1,230. It's not really overwhelming. You look at his completion percentage, it's 48%. That's what I said about him earlier in the podcast. I said, this is a raw quarterback. He struggles making the crisp passes. His average pass is 7.5 yards. He averages 175 per game. He has 5 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. He's been sacked 11 times. You can see why the Colts benched him at one point. You know, this guy. He has all the ability to be a really good quarterback. But there's just issues that he has. And if you look at their overall team um, offense, and that's not defense. If you look at their overall team offense, total yards 338, that's 20th in the league. 202.2 for passing yards, that's 21st in the league. Rushing yards was Jonathan Taylor, they're 118.5, which is 18th in the league. 19th in the league for points per game, that's 21.5. Third down percentage are 20th in the league. You look at how the Detroit Lions defense edges up towards the Indianapolis Colts. There's literally no advantage for the Colts. You look at passing versus no pressure. Detroit's number 2 compared to the Colts being number 24. You look at the Colts being 29 in quick passing. Detroit's second best in that. Detroit's passing versus the blitz. They're 23rd. Detroit's number 1. Passing versus play action. Detroit's number 1. The Colts are number 19. Short passing, which they struggle with mightily. They're going to hit you for some deep shots. That's the way that they play. But short passing, they're 30th in the league, and Detroit ranks 5th overall. And if you wanted to kind of get a glimpse into what Anthony Richardson actually does, like what makes him an interesting player, the way that he plays this game, just look at this: turnover worthy throws. It's at 4.6, which is third highest in the NFL. And when you look at his touch on interception ratio, it tells you eloquently what this guy does. He does put the ball in harm's way. And when you have a guy like Brian Branch, Carlton Davis, Kirby Joseph, this is a game where they could really prey on this kid, because if they allow him to, if they allow him to just pass, he's gonna have a rough time. And you look at Jonathan Taylor, like he's averaging 84.1 yards per game. A lot of times, what teams are doing is they're stacking a box against uh, Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor's dealt with some injuries as well, but 84.1 yards per game, that's decent, but that's not what Jonathan Taylor's majorly supposed to be. But Anthony Richardson, he's rushed for 39.1 per game, and their leading receiver is Alec Pierce with 590 yards. He's one of their top targets in terms of touchdowns. Him and Josh Downs are tied for touchdowns. Michael Pittman, 412 yards, 35 receptions, 65 targets. He gets targeted a lot, but for some reason they just cannot connect. And obviously, A.D. Mitchell, he was drafted by the Colts out of Texas. He's been pretty decent in his rookie year. He's averaging 22.2 yards per game. He had one fumble early on, but his it's just not what you expected out of him. But the guy who gets the most yak is Josh Downs, and that's a kid from North Carolina who's done a damn good job at playing well. And you look at his last game, Downs had 5 receptions for five targets, 5 receptions, 84 yards, a touchdown, and 5 first downs. He didn't match any of that. When they played the Buffalo Bills, he had 7 receptions for 10 targets. He didn't break 80 in any game except Houston, where they lost 23-20. He had 109 yards. But you look at this and you go, what makes this Colts team a little bit sneaky in terms of the way that they play offense? Well, look no further than the injury report. Obviously, Ennis Rakestraw is out. Emmanuel Mosley is questionable. I don't think we'll see Emmanuel Mosley, but the big one is Terrion Arnold has a growing injury. He's questionable to play on Sunday. But the big one here is Bernard Raman, the tackle for the Colts. He is out with a knee injury. He is their starting left tackle. That is a big loss for Anthony Richardson and his offense. When you think about him, he's like the second best pass blocker on the Colts squad. It's a big, it's huge right there because the Colts need someone to pass protect for Anthony Richardson. And the one thing about Anthony Richardson that's well known is that he causes most of his sacks. He does. So it the left tackle missing to Sunday's game is going to be huge in terms of the run game. I believe he's one of their better run blockers as well. But it's going to be interesting what happens with the Colts because they have pieces that could beat you. They have pieces that can beat you downfield. But if you just play your game and you do it the right way, you're going to be fine. It's a matter of two things. Two things. You got to keep Anthony Richardson hemmed in the pocket. When he's in the pocket, he's a totally different passer. And I want to pull this up. This is from NFL Pro because it's a very interesting stat in terms of when you keep him in the pocket, what happens. And I'm pulling it up right now. Hold up. But when you pull, when you, God dang it. When you keep him in the pocket, he's a totally different player. I'm gonna pull it up right now. But while I try to pull it up, you know, it's the same thing with Anthony Richardson that's going to be with Jordan Love, and it's going to be with Caleb Williams. Keep him in the pocket, let him just do his own thing, and figure out a way for him to do it. So here's a stat. In his return to the starting lineup, Anthony Richardson completed 18 of 23 pass attempts from inside the pocket for a season high 256 yards, one touchdown, his highest completion percentage of 78.3, and his completion percentage above expected 7 plus 7.2 on such attempts this season. Richardson struggled passing from inside the pocket prior to week 11, recording just a 47.4 completion percentage and an 18 at minus 10.9 on completion percentage above expected. So he was a negative in the completion percentage above expected. So if you keep him in the pocket, he could. There's times where this is where he's going to make mistakes because he does like to test it downfield. He does like to go downfield and make sure that he can kind of get some things, but it just shows you how easy this is. So obviously um with Anthony Richardson, like this is um this is a big game for them. But I also want to bring you this stat as well. This is from NFL Pro as well. The Colts offense has allowed the third highest pressure rate against the blitz this season, 53.0, compared to 32.4 pressure rate when not blitzing, 11th highest. The Lions defense has blitzed on 35.7 of its blitzes this season, fifth highest rate. Butchers have recorded 37.4 pressure rate when blitzing. That's 25th. However, the Lions are allowed just a 56.7 completion percentage when blitzing this season. That's a fifth lowest with a league low 62.6 passer rating allowed and 7 interceptions, tied for the most. So I think this is where the game is going to go. They're going to blitz the hell out of this kid. It just seems like they're going to blitz the hell out of him. When you look at a guy like Anthony Richardson, what does he struggle with? He struggles being in the pocket. If you start getting him outside the pocket and make him throw on the run, one or two things are going to happen. He's going to get happy feet and he's going to throw a ball that should not be thrown because he's a young and raw product. The second thing is if you allow him to go outside the pocket, he can scramble, he can make plays, but you're always counting on him to kind of how do you want to say it? you kind of count on him to make a mistake at some point. That's where the game's going to be won or lost. I think this is a sneaky game because the sneaky offense of the Colts can present a problem for the Detroit Lions, but I think the Detroit Lions should have a relatively easy time defending this team because they're good at stopping the run. They're good at stopping the pass. This guy has not shown the ability to pass and make crisp passes over the field. You played better quarterbacks over the course of this season that are way better at completing passes with pressure in their face, and you've held every quarterback under 1.5 touchdowns this season. So no quarterback has had 2 touchdowns or more against the Detroit Lions. So that's a lot to say for this Detroit Lions team. So the Lions offense, I mean the Colts offense versus the Lions defense, it's a little bit of a sneaky matchup, especially if there's corners that are not available, like Emmanuel Mosley, which we didn't think he'd be available. Terron Arnold ended up on the injury report with a groin injury, and that doesn't sound good. Obviously, Ray Shaw's out, but you have guys like Amik Robertson, Kindle Vildor that could step in and play right away. I think one of the things that is good about this team is they do have depth at the cornerback position for the first time in a long time. So the injury portion for the Detroit Lions is huge. It's also huge for the Colts since they are missing their starting left tackle. You kind of hope that Terrion Arnold can play, but if he can't, at least you got a Meek out there. At least you got Kindle Vildor to come in. Um, it's going to be interesting to see what happens tomorrow, which is Saturday, with the roster moves. See what potentially could happen. So next on the podcast, we're going to talk about the Detroit Lions offense versus the Colts defense. You won't want to miss this because we're going to go deep dive on the Colts defense. They have a lot of players on that team that could really be impactful, but we'll talk about that on the Detroit Lions podcast next.